The US has doubled its tariffs on India over the country's ongoing purchases of Russian oil. Importers of Indian products will now pay 50% duties, making them more expensive to US consumers. Delhi is torn. It's not interested in cutting ties with Moscow, but it can also ill afford losing business in the US.
20% of Indian exports went to the United States last year, but tariffs of 50% will make those a lot more expensive. It's a problem. But Prime Minister Narendra Modi won't back down in a fight with US President Trump. Farmers, fishermen and cattle farmers of India are our top priorities. Modi will stand like a wall against any policy that threatens the interests of India's farmers, fishermen and cattle farmers. Those interests include selling to Russia, a long-standing trading partner. India also buys oil from Moscow. It's been cheap for years due to Western sanctions over Moscow's war in Ukraine. In India, there's huge demand for oil. Russia covers 35% of it. That number is up from just 2% before the war. Now India is Russia's second biggest buyer of fossil fuels after China. India says the new US tariffs are unfair.
The same arguments which have been used to target India have not been applied to the largest oil importer, which is China, has not been applied to the largest LNG importer, which is the European Union. When people say we are funding the war or putting money in the coffers of Putin, India-European Union trade is bigger than India-Russia trade.
New Delhi remains steadfast against pressure from Washington, refusing to end years-long good relations with Russia that are economically beneficial. But state-owned Indian refineries have halted purchases from Russia for now.
Mohsin Raza Khan is a professor in economics from OP Jindal University in Delhi. Good to have you with us. 50% tariffs taking effect today on Indian goods. What will the immediate repercussions be, do you think?
Well, the repercussions will be both in investments because there will be less investment for export in India, so less FDI. There will be a loss of employment. That will be immediate because many of the tariffs are on labor-intensive industries like textile, like gems and jewelry, and shrimp farming. So we'll have also some impact on our currency because, as you know, US was 20% of our exports, and about half of these exports are going to be impacted immediately. And that means roughly around $45 billion worth of exports will be immediately impacted, $50 billion. This will affect our currency as well. The impact on the stock market should be minor. But the biggest impact will be on employment and currency.
So just to underline that, you feel like this is going to be a big enough event to hit India's economy to the point that it actually affects growth and development here?
Yes, it will impact employment. India has only 10% of its labor force in organized sector employment. Most of India's labor force, 90%, is unorganized sector. And these jobs would be mostly in the organized sector. So it will impact immediately our employment situation. And yes, in the medium to long term, it will affect our, even if these tariffs are removed, it will affect our investments. Because even if these tariffs are reduced from 50 to 25% at some point, we would still be higher than the Asian average, which is around 15 to 20% for most countries in Asia.
And so what are India's options here in light of the tariffs, which are steep? Which alternative markets can India pivot to now?
Not a lot of markets because the US market, was very large. It was about $36 trillion. Say, compare it with the Russian market, which is $2 trillion. Or say, compare it even with China, which is 19. The bigger problem is that most countries don't import Indian products. They don't find them high quality or cheap enough to import them. I'll give you an example. India has a trade surplus with the US, which is now around $47 billion. India on the other hand, has a trade deficit with all the BRICS countries combined. Our trade deficit with the BRICS countries combined is over $200 billion. That is $209 billion is our trade deficit. So the other BRICS countries are not buying our goods. Our exports to the US, that is goods exports, 87 billion, exceed all our exports to the BRICS countries combined. So the US is a big market for us, and it's the only market which is with which we have a trade surplus, large market.
Rosen, do you think there's still a chance that these negotiations are ongoing and that tariffs could come down? Is there still hope?
Yes, the negotiations are going on, and we are all expecting these tariffs to come down. Certainly, the 25% levy for trading fuel with Russia should be off, and maybe even the 25% tariff should come down, in my opinion, to 20%, which is what many other Asian economies, which are our competitors, are getting right now, 19 to 20%. Some larger Asian economies like Japan are getting even lower percentage, like 15%, and there are a couple like Australia, etc., which are at 10%. So we are hoping at least our tariffs should be brought down from 50 to about 20%. But that will depend on the negotiations, which are a bit complicated. If you want, I can explain that.
Maybe another day. Mohsin, Raza Khan, we'll leave it there for now. Economics professor from OP Jindal University in Delhi. Thanks so much.
And for more, I'm joined now by Amiti Sen. She's associate editor at the Hindu Business Line. She joins us from Delhi. It's good to have you with us. So these 50% tariffs that are taking effect today on Indian exports to the U.S., what will the immediate repercussions be?
I think immediately the exporters would really have to figure out how to continue their exports, because they were already hit with 25% tariffs on August 7th, and that had made their lives difficult enough. So actually, I would like to actually go back to April when Trump imposed 10% tariffs. So the 10% tariffs were something that the exporters were again finding difficult to manage, because they don't operate with very large margins, but still, they had negotiated with their buyers, and they had somehow managed to divide the extra burden between themselves. And then they were hoping that the August 7th tariffs wouldn't come, but they did. 25% is huge. But then again, the silver lining here was that it was not India alone that was hit. There were other countries, the competing countries also, that were basically slapped with high tariffs. India's was higher than the others, but the margin was not so much. So after, they were like on August 7th, when they were hit with 25% tariffs, they were again trying to come to terms with that and trying to see how they can navigate their way through it. And they were basically hoping that, the next 25% wouldn't come, because it would make the situation so impossible to deal with that they thought that it was something unreal. But then, August 27th dawned and the tariffs are there, and they are in shock. They don't know what to do, because these 50% tariffs are really debilitating.
Debilitating. Are they strong enough to actually be a drag on the country's entire economy? Are we talking about an impact here on Indian GDP?
Well, India is a big country. We are a big populous country. Our GDP is big. It's almost $4 trillion. And here we are talking about, U.S. exports last year for India, it was around $86.5 billion. So it's around less than 2% of India's GDP. But, if we look at livelihoods, if we look at the kind of labor these exporters have been supporting, so that magnitude is huge. So because of this 50% tariffs, if factories come to a shut, if they shut down, if the manufacturing bases shift, then it would not only dent our GDP. So as we were saying, that dent might not be too much, but then it would have a ripple effect. Livelihoods will be hurt. So we cannot look at the effect only in terms of how much GDP would get hurt, but it is millions of livelihoods at stake.
And are there alternative markets that India could pivot to?
So, US has been our largest export market for some time. So it contributes to around 20% of India's total exports. But then there is Europe also, which is a big market for us. There is Germany, there is Netherlands, Italy. So these are big markets. And apart from Europe, we have UAE. With UAE, we have a free trade agreement already. With EU, we are negotiating a free trade agreement. We are hoping that, talks might get expedited and we might have an FTA by the end of the year. But EU is a big block. So till we get there, we haven't reached there and we cannot basically count our chickens before they are hatched. So EU is a big market which we are trying to look at. But then there are other markets like Latin America or Africa where the potential is huge, where, because traditionally they have not been big markets for India. So our comfort zone is not there. So that is why Indian exporters were largely focused on the West. But now, because of if they feel the push, if they feel this pinch, they may, with the help of some help from the government, they may, look towards the newer markets as well.
And the new tariffs, what could they mean for India's political relationship with the United States?
Yeah, so that is something that everybody is really, really watching with a lot of interest because, as far as our Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump, they are concerned, there was this image that, they were very close and they were friends because Trump would say, my friend Modi, and Modi would say, oh, my friend Donald. So, there was a lot of bonhomie around this personal relationship. So that is why, people are much more surprised than they might have been otherwise because it was assumed in India, or maybe the BJP, the ruling party, it wanted to project the bonhomie as something that would basically improve relationships between the two countries. But seeing just the opposite happen, it's a big surprise. And also going forward, we do not know how this personal relationship between the two leaders would shape up, because I think now Donald Trump has also been talking about Modi. He's talking about the war between Pakistan and India and how he called up Modi and he said that you have to stop. And here Prime Minister Modi is like totally mum about it. So we don't know what kind of friction this is going to develop into in the days to come.
Yeah, it's hard to know if a bromance and tariffs, if they really do mix. We will obviously find out. Amiti Sen with the Hindu Business Line. Amita, it's good to have you on. Thank you.
Thanks.